Good morning. Welcome to the West Ham Voice on a Thursday morning. I hope you're having a good week already. Look, there might be some good news on the horizon, especially with links to a couple of players, Youssof Fofana and James Ward-Prowse. And I'll get onto those stories in a moment. But before I do, I feel I owe my viewers an apology. You see, I get information about what seems to be happening at the club, and I also try to research as much information as I can to then package it all together and bring you guys a live show or these pre-recorded shows. I always try to ensure that the information I get is as accurate as it can be. But there are times when, despite best intentions, situations change. And before you know it, the stories are inaccurate or old news by the time the videos go out. And I guess one prime example of that is the Carlos Borges saga. Look, everybody thought 2 weeks ago that the deal was done and dusted. You know, Sky presented it. Everybody talked about it as if it was a done deal. Social media channels and the whole caboodle. Only to find that, of course, the deal fell through this week. Now, as I keep being told, a deal's not really done until a contract is signed by the player. There've been many occasions in football where footballers have gone for medicals, part of their transfer plan, gone for medicals, etc., only for other teams to come in and steal a player from under another team's noses. It's happened. It happens quite a bit, and and it's happened with this one. Regarding Borges, look, I think we messed it up. To be quite honest with you, apparently Moyes didn't want the player anyway. Someone has to question, despite him being a great talent, was he really a priority target? And whose decision was that? Because we heard all these conflicting stories that it was Newman that identified him, and it was Steidten that identified him, and then apparently Moyes got overruled with the deal. You know, he didn't want him, but he was overruled by who? By Sullivan or whoever. So a lot of conflicting stories, but you've got to ask yourself, was he ever a prime target in the first place when we keep hearing that primarily we need central midfielders and central defenders. Look, £14 million spend would have been, I'm sure it would have been good. He's a great bargain for the future. I think Ajax have got a player now that they can nurture. And, Man City will love that because I'm sure he'll do really well and probably get an awful lot of game time at Ajax. And then Man City can turn around and trigger their buyback clause. Because for me, the more you keep thinking about it and the more I kept trying to convince myself that this player was coming into West Ham, giving us options. I talked about it. I talked about, he could play on the left side. It allowed Cornet to come in, etc., etc. All these sort of different setups that we could use Borges for. But in essence, he might have ended up becoming our most expensive under 21 player. Even that's a possibility. So that was the first story. I told you guys it's a done deal. It's a done deal. And of course, the whole thing about him being away. Why hasn't it been signed yet? And I even said, he's on holiday. He's played international football. Everyone has a right to be away for a while before they go report back to their teams. And what happened? Comes back from holiday or doesn't come back from holiday. And before we know it, he's going to Ajax. Another story, of course, is the whole thing about Gianluca Scamacca. I've been saying throughout the whole of summer, there's no way this guy's leaving. He's changed his shirt number. He's absolutely staying, etc. But the rumours persisted, that Roma wanted him and then Inter want him and all that sort of stuff. And then West Ham United admitted the other day that the player wants to leave. So my apologies to you guys because I feel like a bit of a fool, really, because like I said, I come out, I give you these stories with best intentions, etc., and it feels like sometimes I'm misleading you, and that's why I've decided this, in this summer transfer window, not to do continuous shows about transfer targets. There are so many targets. I think if you remember, what I used to do in the past, I'd tell you about every player that was out there. We've been linked to this player, that player, etc. And I didn't want to do that. And I sort of want to just give you the stories that seem more realistic, but even those don't turn out to be so. Anyway, my apologies, and let's get on with this show because this is brief. You don't need me to tell you how bad things seem to be at West Ham United right now. Things aren't right, are they? They're not clearly. We keep hearing leak after leak after leak about things not being right at the club. Look, after winning a trophy for the first time in over 40 odd years, instead of that success and the fact that we're back in Europe, etc., and building on that, back in Europe for a third historic season in a row, we're behaving like a club that's just been relegated, where players don't seem to want to stay and players don't seem to want to come. But what exactly is going on? Because negative story after negative story does get you down after a while. And just when you think things are, couldn't get any worse, something comes up and you scratch your head again and go, what the hell's going on? So let's try and bring you first a little bit of good news. I hope it's a little bit of good news. And I'm going to give this a massive disclaimer of I can't corroborate this, but I think, I've got to do that because otherwise I'm going to end up looking silly again. Now, all I can tell you when I tell you the next story is that Jacob Steinberg has mentioned on his Twitter account on Wednesday that there are more optimistic. We're more optimistic on signings coming to West Ham United, and he quoted three players in particular: James Ward-Prowse, of course, Edson Alvarez. It looks like we might be going back in for him again, or whether we did or not before, but apparently we did. But we're looking at Alvarez again, and of course Youssof Fofana of Monaco. Now, on Wednesday, Arsenal hosted French team Monaco at the Emirates. And apparently, and this is my big disclaimer, people, apparently the rumor is that David Moyes and Tim Steidten were at the Emirates watching who? Maybe they were watching Declan Rice and see how he was getting on at his new club. Or they could, of course, been glancing an eye over Tim Steidten linked defensive midfielder Youssof Fofana. I kind of hoping it's true. I really am because from what we've been told, he had a great game. The rumours of the past few days is that apparently David Moyes is beginning to warm to the idea of a player like Fofana. And I guess one could argue that after chasing all his prime targets and being turned down, that maybe Moyes is realising he needs to cast his net wider than just Premier League proven players that he seems to prefer. Fofana was imperious against Arsenal. He was absolutely superb in midfield. And whilst the Arsenal fan base are beginning to lose it over Declan Rice's performances, they don't know yet what sort of player that they're getting. They're getting a fantastic player, but they're his problem now, and it's down to him to win them over. But as far as we're concerned, Fofana oozes class. Looks like he'd be a fantastic replacement for Declan Rice. He scored the opening goal for Monaco as well. Look, what we need, I believe, most important selection at the moment when it comes to transfers is a defensive midfielder, a proper defensive midfielder who will allow our flair players and our attacking players to do the things that they do best. And we should not look no further than Fofana, because if we can get him, I think we're getting a fantastic deal. He'll be a defensive midfielder who could revitalise our midfield. 24 years of age, French international, surprisingly available for only £30 million, but he only has a year left on his contract at Monaco. Now, Monaco have got an option, should I say, to extend his contract by another year. But it sounds to me that they might be looking to cash in on him. So this must surely be the time to strike. And I just hope that Moyes and Steidten are beginning to see eye to eye as on transfer targets, because this can not only transform our team. Interestingly, if we do go for Fofana and be successful in getting him, I think it could also transform David Moyes in the eyes of the West Ham fan base. So let's see what happens there. Like I said, though, Steinberg wrote about it. Maybe there's some good news coming, and he mentioned, like I said, Ward-Prowse, Fofana, and Alvarez. And the bit I can't corroborate is that I've heard that it's possible Moyes and Steidten were at the Emirates. Let's put it in perspective. Steidten works on stats. Steidten works on data-driven analysis, to get players in. Moyes wants to see the players for himself. So it would kind of make sense, wouldn't it? if he was at the Emirates checking out Fofana. It would have been an absolutely ideal opportunity to do so. Right. What about Ward-Prowse? Well, we know we've been chasing Ward-Prowse for most of the summer. We made a bid, I think, of 20 million, turned down. Wasn't surprising. And then we made a bid of 25 million, turned down again. Again, wasn't surprising. And then apparently we came in with a take it or leave it deal. Take it or leave it, Southampton, 27 million pounds, but plus 3 million pounds in add-ons. And of course, you would have scripted it. Southampton turned it down. Look, they value the player at around 40 million. Apparently, we're looking at maybe coming in once more and going in with a slightly higher bid to the 30 that we've offered. I'll be very honest with you. Uh, I think he'll certainly bring an awful lot to West Ham United. He'll certainly bring goals through set pieces and all that sort of stuff. But 40 million for a 28-year-old player who doesn't have any other teams chasing him, as far as I'm aware, I think would be a bit too much. You look at the Declan Rice situation when we knew we had interest from Arsenal and Man City, and that helped to up the price. At this moment in time, I'm not aware that any other team apart from West Ham are after Ward-Prowse. So therefore, if we're the only team chasing him, I think we can I think we will go in for one more bid. It sounds like we will. Whether it will be up to 35 million, I don't know. If we get him for 35 million, I think Southampton have done exceptionally well. So maybe good news then. Maybe good news on both Ward-Prowse and Fofana possibly coming to West Ham United. Look, another player that David Moyes really wants is Harry Maguire. I know you're all going to be pulling your hair out, but I think, hang on a minute. Look, in all honesty, this particular chase is beginning to sound like a Jesse Lingard scenario all over again. Where despite the player saying, he wanted to fight for his place at Man United, or otherwise he'd want to go to a bigger club than West Ham United, and despite Man United wanting around 40 million pounds for the player, and despite the player being on 180 grand a week, Moyes is determined to get him. Now, whilst I can accept that we may have to pay maybe up to 35 million pounds for Ward-Prowse, I think paying another 35 million or more for Maguire might be a step too far. Look, I think Maguire can do a job for us. I think Ward-Prowse can do a job for us, even at their age. He's 28 years of age for Ward-Prowse. He's not old, and 30 years of age for Maguire. Again, he's not old. They can certainly give us a couple of years each. But what that does is it continues to raise the average age of an already one of the oldest, if not the oldest squad in the Premier League. It continues to raise the average age of that squad. It's also worth mentioning that, like I said, if we end up spending 75 million pounds of our current 105 million pounds kitty, that's an awful lot of money. And it might be increased. It sounds like we're selling other players imminently, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But it's a large chunk of that 105 million pounds. The other thing to consider is, of course, that Moyes is in his final year of his contract at West Ham United, and it doesn't look like there's a possibility of that contract being extended. God knows what he'll have to do. He'll have to get into the Champions League by finishing in the top four or winning the Europa League to do that. And even then, I'm not so sure that Sullivan will offer him a longer contract. I don't know. So with Moyes possibly leaving at the end of the season, his replacements, a new coach, a new manager, will be lumbered with an aged squad of players who might be signed up for, say, 2, 3, 4-year contracts that he would then have to find a way of moving on. But the problem for the new coach would be that he won't be able to generate much money from the sale of these players because of their age. So there's a big conundrum there. They'll be on big salaries, older players, etc. So I can understand in a way why Sullivan may be reluctant to pay the money, the going rate for these players. Maybe one of them, yeah, Ward-Prowse, maybe. But to go for Maguire as well at that similar sort of price, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that will happen. There's a general consensus that Sullivan has already instructed Steidten to start looking for a Moyes replacement. Look, Steidten ain't there doing nothing, twiddling his thumbs. He's clearly there to do a job, and one of those jobs, apart from just transfers, is to look for a replacement for David Moyes. And there's nothing to say that a replacement coach couldn't come to West Ham United sooner rather than later. It's possible that it's possible that Moyes could be replaced early. I guess what will happen is if we don't do well in the league, Sullivan may pull the trigger. But a lot of people are saying, there's the back him or sack him scenario. A lot of people are saying, if you're going to keep Moyes and you're going to keep him throughout the transfer window, then give him the funds to back him, to buy the players that he wants. But honestly, buying Maguire and Ward-Prowse at around 70, 75 million pounds for the two, I'm not so sure that would be the best way to spend our money. Anyway, what about done that one? Sorry. What about players that who are looking at leaving the club? Because we know we're hearing story after story after story. I'll go back to Scamacca. Look, what Italian teams have to do is show us some real money. Roma keep going on about loaning him, and then paying 17 million pounds for him. That ain't going to happen. Inter apparently made a bid. I don't know if it's been confirmed, whether it's an official bid or not, of something like 20 million pounds, and they might come in with a slightly improved offer. That ain't going to happen either. Atalanta now are apparently interested in the player. And they've just completed the sale of Rasmus Højlund to Man United or they're about to complete it for 72 million pounds. So they're flush with money. Now, if anyone's going to have money out of the Italian teams, it sounds like Atalanta may do so. But it depends on what they might come in with. Now, this talk about us losing 10 million pounds on the player, I don't believe. Look, we bought him for 30.5 million plus add-ons. So I don't know how many of those add-ons by winning the Europa Conference have been triggered, but West Ham are going to be looking to get at least as near as 30 million pounds to allow the player to go. I think a bid of something like 27, 28 million pounds might just do it. So if one of these Italian clubs has got that sort of money, then Scamacca will go. Will he stay otherwise? Well, unless he puts in a transfer request, I think he's going to have no choice but to do so if a club doesn't come in and offer the sort of money that we believe he should go for. There is, of course, another striker that is rumoured still to be leaving, and that's Antonio. We've heard, we saw back in the January transfer window, his desire. It was obvious he had a desire to leave. Now, apparently, Everton have an interest in the player. The only problem is Everton haven't got any money. They've got their own financial problems, so they're going to have to sell in order to buy. Now, I know we've been linked to, is it Damari Gray, who's at the club, that maybe there might be a swap deal going. I don't know. I think he's all right. Not the player I would really fancy, but it'll be an interesting deal. At least we'll get a player for a player. I think he's 27 years of age, whereas Antonio's now 33. Apparently, also there's rumor that he might be going to the MLS, the American League. Now that might make sense for him. He plays all his international games, in that part of the world for Jamaica. So that might make sense as well. So let's see what happens there. But, Antonio wants to leave because he wants a last big payday. He's already on 100 grand a week at West Ham United. He thinks he can get more elsewhere. And good luck to him if he does. And of course, the other player that wants to leave is Aaron Creswell. Rightly so. I've said this already. He's looking after the last few years of his playing career. Wolves will offer him a 2-year contract as opposed to the 1-year contract that he has at West Ham United. They'll probably offer him more money as well. I don't blame him. Now, apparently he's gone on strike. He's certainly training, but he's not training with the team. And apparently, there are 2 players that missed training on Tuesday at Rush Green. I don't know whether the squad have gone out to Germany today or later today. I think that they're likely to leave on today if they haven't already left. And there's 2 players that are not likely to make that trip to Germany, which is Creswell and Scamacca. Now, I don't know if you noticed, I was going to say, in the training session that was filmed on Tuesday, 2 players were missing, Creswell and Scamacca. So it looks like it's almost definite that both those players are going to be leaving. Now, we also know that Nikola Vlasic wants to leave. Well, uh, that's no secret, is it? He's not part of David Moyes' plans. Apparently he's really fed up, and apparently now we've seemed to have come to an arrangement with Torino where he's going to leave for around about £10 million. So that's going to happen. That will boost the coffers of the 105 million transfer kitty that we already have. And there's also news that the likes of Thomas Soucek and Jarrod Bowen are not interested in signing contracts whilst David Moyes is at the club. I don't know again how true that is, but that's the rumor. Look, Soucek is in his last year of his contract. If he doesn't sign an extended contract, either we'll try and sell him in this window. Maybe that's why we're going for Ward-Prowse and Fofana and Alvarez, etc. Maybe because we're looking at potentially selling Soucek. There was interest from some Turkish team for him. That's gone a little bit quiet, but that might happen given that he's got a year left and he's not looking to extend his contract. Jarrod Bowen, he's got 2 years left. I think we're a little bit more comfortable with Bowen because we know, okay, his value will go down if he only has a year left. But Bowen, probably a little bit more comfortable on. And that's it. There's a lot that's going on and a lot that doesn't seem to be going on. Certainly an awful lot going on behind the scenes. Players, 1 minute we're looking at buying them, next minute they're going elsewhere. It's been happening quite a lot. You lose one player in the transfer window, you go, all right, fair enough. You lose two, all right, fair enough. You lose 3, 4 targets, 5 targets, then you've got to ask yourself, what on earth is going on? Players leaving, but I think there are good reasons. Antonio, I understand it. He wants a bigger contract elsewhere. Creswell, I understand it. He wants to look after his immediate future. But Scamacca clearly, and also Vlasic clearly, didn't want to play under Moyes, and it looks like they'll be going as well. Will we replace Scamacca and/or Antonio? I think if we lose both, I think we're going to have no choice but to replace him. And then, no, there's all these stories going on about Hugo Ekitike from PSG. That story's been going on for the last 2 years, and various other stories apparently that we're looking at bringing other players in. I'm not even going to talk about them because they're rumours at the moment. Until we hear that we're going to lose either Scamacca and/or Antonio and/or Creswell, then there's no point talking about potential replacements. We've already heard that Adrian Truffert is looking at signing an extended deal with Rennes rather than being sold. So he'll be out of the equation to be a replacement for Creswell if Creswell leaves. Still a lot to go. Still a lot going on. At the moment, it looks like the focus is on trying to get players in. So let's see what happens. Let's hope that the Ward-Prowse deals, I don't mind Ward-Prowse, he'll get us goals. The Ward-Prowse deals and the Fofana deal goes through. And then we can start resting a bit easy and start thinking about the league that's about to start in the next week and a half or so. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're new to the channel, do hit the like, subscribe, and bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. And I'll see you all again very soon.